In 2011, Desloge put a plaque of Firmin Desloge in the City Hall. But today I want to look a bit beyond lead mining, because yes, lead mining is an important part of the story, but it's not the whole story. It's also a story of a French immigrant seeking his fortune in America, the story of one of his sons who became one of the wealthiest men in the country, and the story of a family that's centered in St. Louis that has been described as French aristocrats in the American West. The Desloge family motto is Deus Honestum Fortis. I knew that Latin was going to come in handy. God honors strength. And in this presentation today, I hope you will understand why that motto is appropriate. Firmin René Desloge, the father of Firmin Vincent, was born in Nantes, France in 1803. There's Nantes. He was the son of Joseph Desloge and Marie Angelique Rozier. And in 1815, his mother first wrote her brother, who was living in America, in St. Genevieve, about finding an employment for one of her sons. And she writes, "I would not regret having given birth to them," that's 10 children, "if I had any fortune to offer them. But the small success we have had in business takes from us all chance of making them successful." The Desloges were related to nobility, but had suffered great losses during the French Revolution. Now, Joseph Desloge earned a small salary as a tax collector, but he barely made enough to really take care of his family. So it was necessary to find a suitable business for each of the sons to go into. Firmin René, the 7th child, was eventually chosen to go to America. So he left Nantes in 1822, traveled to New Orleans, and up the river to St. Genevieve by 1823. Now his uncle, Ferdinand Rozier, had come to the United States about 15 years earlier, in 1806, accompanied by his business partner, John James Audubon. I couldn't find a picture of Ferdinand Rozier, but Audubon is out there all over the place. So they were business partners. In 1810, they located in St. Genevieve, where they established a mercantile and fur trading business. Their business prospered. Whiskey purchased for 25 cents a gallon back east sold for $2 a gallon in St. John. However, Audubon proved to be an unreliable business partner who spent way too much of his time out looking for birds. And eventually, Rozier bought him out by 1811. By the time of his death, in 1864, the Rozier name was just as prominent in St. Genevieve as the valley name. 6 months after young Firmin's arrival, Rozier sent him to Potosi, formerly called Mine of Breton, to run a trading post there. Desloge set up shop on High Street, and in letters he sent home, he describes conditions in Potosi as extremely bad. But it was nevertheless worthwhile because he learned the language and the business methods. We have some idea maybe of what the area looked like because in 1819, Henry Schoolcraft had featured a drawing of the Potosi area in his book, A View of the Lead Mines of Missouri. At first, Desloge traded for lead, but soon he began mining it on his own, and he built a smelter in Potosi. Contemporaries said Desloge, and again we're talking about René, he had a nose for finding lead. Along with lead mining, Desloge engaged in fur trading, operated a distillery, ran a dry goods store. Desloge's fur trading business, it is said, rivaled that of Auguste and Pierre Choteau's operation in St. Louis. Firmin René and family exchanged many letters, which are now in the Missouri History Museum archives, and the city of Desloge library has copies. One of those letters was about his future bride, Cynthia McIlvaine, whom he married in 1832. Now, the McIlvaine family tree goes back to one Jesse McIlvaine, whom it is said came to America in 1618 with William Penn. Firmin says his uncle wanted him to marry a young lady of French parentage, And he admits that he once felt the same way. But now he is prepared to drop the prejudices of his birth, he says. Her father is only a farmer, he writes, but in our Republican country, that estate holds the proper social rank it deserves. There's Cynthia, who was named, by the way, of the town Cynthiana, Kentucky, where her family had come from. He goes on to say that she brings no fortune, nor superior talent, nor astonishing beauty, but she has slipped into my affection. For many years, Firmin and Cynthia maintained a home in Potosi. Their 10th child out of 12 total, Zoe, remembers a white frame house with a shingle roof and a red brick chimney and a white picket fence. There was a gazebo covered with honeysuckle, a stable and a carriage house, and a brick smokehouse. One of Zoe's jobs was pulling the fly fan when company visited, a chore usually done by one of the small Negroes. Zoe says her father did not approve of slavery, but there simply were no other servants to be had. The Desloge house was renowned for its flower garden. Cynthia loved flowers, and Firmin picked up many varieties on his trips to St. Louis and his annual trip to Philadelphia. The Desloges had a Singer sewing machine, the first in Potosi, and it was a great curiosity. Obviously, Firmin Rene Desloge had prospered in America. He died in 1856, and he and his wife Cynthia are buried in St. James Cemetery, Potosi. Now, Firmin Vincent Desloge II, the main hero of our story, was born in 1843 in Potosi. He was the 6th child out of 12. No, that's not right. Maybe that's right. I think it was 12. Firmin reportedly was a shy and lonely boy, reportedly made few friends while at school. 2 years after his father's death, when Firmin Vincent was age 15, he began attending St. Louis University. He distinguished himself in English, math, history, public speaking. Afterwards, he got a job as a clerk for a company called John B. Valley and Company. Now, it just so happens that his oldest sister Lucy had married John Valley. And the Valley family, of course, is one of the oldest and most prominent French families in the area. Now, this job gave Firmin greater insight into the lead business through the Valley family's connections with Valley mines. By this point, I trust you are beginning to see the enormous importance of family connections. The Desloge family moved to St. Louis in 1861 at the outset of the Civil War, following several attacks on their lead mining operation by both Confederate and Federal forces, both seeking lead for weapons. After the war, the family decided to stay in St. Louis. They lived in several places before Cynthia built a house on Benton Place, this house in the fashionable Lafayette Square district. In 1867, Firmin left St. Louis to join the family business in Potosi. His older brother Frank was running the mercantile end of the business, so Firmin turned his attention to mining. Productive mining land in Washington County was becoming scarce, so Desloge began looking at other locations. Now, St. Joseph Lead Company's venture in St. Francis County had attracted a lot of local attention. St. Joe had been formed in 1864 and it started operations in Bonne Terre. So Desloge was interested in the land just north of St. Joe's property. Now, this land had once belonged to Jean-Baptiste Pratt and had been sold to relatives Pierre and Antoine Pratt. There are several stories about how Desloge acquired this land. One story is that he won a plot of land in a poker game. Another story said he traded a spotted pony, not just any pony, but a spotted